And now, Chapter 35 of The Last Boy on Earth, The True Battlefield. Kaylee took hold of the cord and stepped closer to the water. She was already aware that the newly formed Brady Grendel was stirring awake from his conversion somewhere in the waters of the bay. Soon, the window of opportunity would be closed, and she would have to fight him. Bjorn stood at the water's edge and huffed, his snout flaring and his mouth open. She wished she could understand the bear as Brady did. She had one task to complete. She needed to get power to the transmitter so that Joe and Dr. Grindle could complete the transmission and let the word go forth. Her position on the shore allowed her a clear view of the tower and the observation deck at the top. Up there, she thought, is the power to unite all the remaining humans on Earth. This was more than just a chance. This was the last chance. She understood that if the scattered pockets of people never connected, then it would be as though people had never existed. All the music, all the books, all the dancing and loving and beauty would vanish, because there would be no one to remember it. Within 1,000 years, all evidence of a bipedal creature that called itself human would have been erased. She remembered the vision from her last visit, the dead waiting on the far shore, refusing to move until they knew they would be remembered, and someone would carry on. She suspected it was the connection that allowed the living to move forward, but she hadn't thought about it from the other perspective. She understood the dead needed the living to know they had not lived in vain, so that they could continue to their final destination, secure in the knowledge that they had paved the way in the world for those who followed. They had lived for a purpose. They were the people. They were humanity. All those gathered on the far shore in the multitude had died too soon because of the advent of a species-killing virus, and their appointed tasks would forever remain undone. Kaylee mused if they were remembered, it might be enough. The bear fell to all four paws and began to walk a circle around her, each one getting smaller and smaller. It was clear to her that he was driving her toward the water's edge. "Okay, I'm going," she said finally. Bjorn grunted, but before he could move, his body was lifted and thrown through the air, landing against the trunk of a nearby pine. Standing in his place, the form of Brady Grendel had emerged from the river. Kaylee recognized the part of the monster that was Brady, and it frightened her more than any other incarnation that Grendel had taken. How could she fight this thing that was also her friend, somewhere deep beneath? The boy had become monstrous. He rose to 8 feet tall. His chin was square, and his head had a Frankenstein quality to it, chiseled and blocky. Arms rippled with musculature, and his eyes were burning red with anger. His whole frame shuddered with strength. Club-like hands formed fists of rage. The behemoth of Brady Grendel towered over Kaylee's diminutive form. "Too late, Kay," snarled the beast. "I'll rip your head from off your body and shove it down your beautiful throat." "Brady?" she asked, detecting a hint of her friend's voice. "Is that you? Are you in there?"
"Oh, he's in here, all right. He's in a place darker than oblivion, and as timeless as a black hole. You'll never see him again, Kay. Never."
Something gave her pause, something familiar, something Brady. Had the monster, which had fought her and kept her prisoner in the hospital, just called her Kay? That was what Brady had started calling her, and only recently had he felt comfortable enough to do that. Though her heart raced with adrenaline and fear, she suspended her instinct to plunge into the battle immediately. "Brady, you have to fight back. I know you're in there and between the words. Remember the reason we're here. Focus. If you fight him from inside and I fight him from outside, he doesn't stand a chance." There was a strange strangling noise in Brady Grendel's throat, and he paused, confused at the sudden change in his physical state. He cleared his throat and spat out a greasy wad of gray phlegm upon the ground in front of her.
"Don't waste your words. He's long gone. He's lost, all alone. You can't find him in here. I'm all that remains of him. I am him."
"Brady, I know you," she said, calmly as she looked directly into the eyes of the monster. I know you're good. I know you always do the right thing. If you're in there, I want you to know how much you mean to me." The monster stopped. He blinked and shook his massive, irregularly shaped head and raised his hands to cover his own ears. Then, through a gargled voice, he said, "Kay, is that you?" She smiled and replied, "Brady, I knew you were in there." "Kay," the voice was distant, like the last vestige of an echo on a windy day. Brady spoke from a far distance. "All great battles are fought from within. Remember." In one fluid moment, she withdrew the katana from the scabbard over her shoulder, and in the same movement, she let it fall upon the monster's shoulder. A wave of pain shuddered up the blade into her hands. "Brady!" Still, she didn't stop. Another swipe of the blade along the cap of the beast's left knee brought it down for a moment. She moved away, as if to reposition herself for her next aggressive move, but the beast arose with all the alacrity of an athlete and turned away, letting his taloned paw slice 3 red lines of pain into Kaylee's right cheek. She wondered if Brady was feeling the pain or if the monster was, and then she remembered. They were both the same. Still, she needed to buy time. The monster laughed. "I know what you're doing. I absorbed the Renamer's every thought and memory. I know you're a water witch. I know you speak to the waves and they obey, but I've mutated since then. Water no longer affects me. I'm immune to its effects. So whatever you're planning, it's a waste of your time, you seed little witch. I learn from my mistakes. I evolve into something better and stronger each time. You fight me and you only make me stronger. Soon nothing will be able to stop me." Kaylee didn't show one single emotion. She was stone. She was ice. Her only focus was the blade and where it would strike next. Even if what the monster said was true and all of their hopes and dreams were about to be smashed into oblivion, she would stand this ground until she fell, adamant. Her fear had grown to ripeness. A monster with Brady's abilities would be nearly impossible to stop. "I'm not going to give up. You're going to have to kill me," she said stonily. Brady Grendel shook his head and laughed. "I don't have to kill you. All I need to do is stop the message from going through. Then I can destroy the transceiver. The old man will die, and he's the only one who understands how to build and operate the equipment. He's your wizard. Probably the only human left who truly understands how things used to work. The few pathetic humans left on the face of this little world will never meet again. They'll wander the earth for the rest of their lives looking for each other, but they will never again connect. Humanity is finished. And then, when you're all gone, nature can finally take its course." "Joe is your friend," she said. "He's the Renamer's friend. He is my enemy. Like you, I have no friends. I need no friends." Kaylee's face changed, and a wry smile began to form just on the corner of her mouth. She tried to hold it back, but the monster saw the change, and for a moment he wondered. There's always something you can't predict, she thought. "You're going to wish you had some friends," was all she said. She knew what was coming, even if the monster didn't. From her perspective, she saw the metal form of an oversized sword come crashing down upon the monster. It was a saber from the Civil War, or at least a good facsimile, oversized and made of brass. From beyond all hope, Hugin had brought him. It had taken all day, but General Joshua Chamberlain had arrived with all the simple good sense his real-life counterpart had always exhibited. Brady Grendel screamed in pain. The saber had sunk deep into the monster's flesh, touching Brady's form beneath. Kaylee didn't stop to ponder the implications for her friend. She knew that the general could fight all night long and never be wounded. He was invincible. Even if he couldn't beat Brady Grendel, he could certainly keep him very, very busy. That would give her time. Joe and Dr. Grindle needed power to transmit to the others, out there, somewhere in the dark, far away. She was the only one who could do it, and she was beginning to sense how. Brady Grendel evaded the general's next thrust and slipped past the metal man and back toward Kaylee. He lifted a taloned claw high and began to bring it down like a rake of knives against Kaylee, when a stone creature not 3 feet tall barreled past her and against the monster, knocking him off center. Gregoire turned and said to Kaylee, "I have come a long way to be here. Huh? I apologize for my endless, shameless lateness, but these little stone wings do not fly worth a damn. I had to walk the whole way from the city. Oh, my legs are so heavy."
"Gregoire, thank you. Watch out," she shouted as the monster arose and lifted the stone monster like a bowling ball in his fist.
"Do not worry about me. I am made of stone, but my heart is full of passion, huh? Vive la resistance! Unhand me, you putrid, sorry, ignorant ass. I swear if you lay a hand on her beautiful head, I'll kick your ass all the way to Sunday. You ain't never gonna touch her."
The gargoyle quickly went from his ridiculous French accent to his Jersey shore lilt in one sentence. Before the monster could hurl him away into the river where he would undoubtedly sink like a stone, Gregoire whistled and Huguin dive-bombed to Grendel's face, pecking at his eyes with feverish ferocity. Gregoire managed to get free and land just at the end of the river.
"Now, while we got his attention, do your thing. Come on. Hey, you doggy doo-doo. You looking at me, huh? What are you looking at? Think 'cause I'm short I can't take you on? You try me, shouted the gargoyle as he charged the monster.
The general's blade slashed at Brady Grendel as Gregoire's small but well-packed form ran into the monster's knee, sending him to the ground, flailing. The two unlikely allies were buying her the time she needed. She didn't even hazard a second glance at their ensuing battle, and instead she turned and dove into the icy coldness of the Penobscot River and the mixing salty waters of Penobscot Bay. Kaylee found herself in the world of the river again. She was greeted by 1,000 hands and arms that carried her like a rock star who had dived into an enthusiastic crowd. The hands carried her along, and she flowed like the river. She was water, time, and tide. "You've returned, my daughter," said a voice from everywhere all at once. She felt the deep voice within her, and her bones felt it rather than hearing it only with her ears. "I have," she answered. "I'm ready to fulfill my purpose. What am I supposed to do?"
"Believe."
Kaylee weighed the word in her mind, wondering how such things could be. But it didn't matter. She was alive, suspended in another world next to her own. "The dead await your task, Kaylee. This much is clear. But your friend needs your help too. The monster will consume him," said the river woman. "You must help him, else he will perish." "How can I help him?" she asked. "By helping him remember who he really is. By standing next to him and believing in the future as strongly as he does. So many of the living believe they're alone when all the time we're nearby. His belief in the future of humanity is the strongest force on earth. He sees things as they are and how they should be at the same time," answered Death. "Who is he precisely?" asked Kaylee, feeling bold in the face of the eldritch woman. "Ah," whispered the river woman. "He is able to see the truth of things and give things their true names. All the old names have no meaning. The dictionary has been erased. Creation demands a new listing. Here's the secret that wise ones have known since the world began. To name something is to control it. He has the power to rename the world and everything in it. He has already begun this with his map and his way of changing the old names to the new. But who will name the renamer? Whoever can rename him has power over him, for to name is to master. Daughter, only you can tell him who he really is. You know him better than you think. Only you can name the renamer." "Well, how do I do that? Do I just call him something like Joe or Bob?" The river woman laughed, and the stars blinked on the panoply of the night sky. "You need not do such a thing. Only tell yourself who he is to you. That is all. Who is this young man who went bravely into the beast? What does he mean to you?" Kaylee felt the frustration mounting on her shoulders, her face reddening and her mind reeling. He's my friend. He's the best friend I've ever had. I'd die for him." "There," said the river woman. "You've done it. Such a friendship can save the world." Kaylee did not know what to do next. "What is the trouble?" asked those of the waters, though she could not see them. "Soon, if I don't do something, the monster will make his way up to the tower and kill Joe and the doctor.
I'll be the only one left besides a bear who walks on 2 feet and a raven I can't even understand. Oh, and a stone gargoyle who wants to be my boyfriend. I need power for that transmitter." She heard the sounds of bells and the wind, the long whisper spoken ages ago, and voices whose reverberations were singing. Sins are rewarded, good deeds are denied. Who were they, and what did they want, she wondered. "Do not listen to them, daughter," said the river mother. "They are the lost, they are the damned. They do not want to see the light." Those were the voices of those of the waters, who had carried her along like slaves that did her bidding, like fawning servants to her royal highness. "Those of the waters? Are they dead, like those on the far shore?" "They are," answered the river mother, "but they do not matter. They are not of the river or of the shore. They are the lost. They were shown the way to the shore, but did not seek it. They were afraid and did not move on. They serve me in hopes that I will somehow send them forward to their own final destination, but that is not my place. They missed their chance, but they will do your bidding because they believe you, as my daughter, will one day allow them to step upon the shore they once denied. They are my servants, and now they are yours too. They are the lost." She thought of the billions of souls waiting for her on the far shore. And immediately the unseen hands of the waters began to propel her toward it. Kaylee didn't resist any longer. She gave in to this reality and embraced it, and like an amnesiac newly awakened, let things happen. Somehow, at the end of it all, this felt right. "Charon," a voice said to her as she stepped upon the shore. The name echoed endlessly as it passed from one shade to another in a maddening refrain. She stepped into the throng of impatient souls as their hollow eyes followed her. They said nothing else and waited for her to speak. "My name is Charon. I am the daughter of the river. I am here to seek your help." They waited like a Greek chorus, stone still and emotionless. "On the other side of this water, a battle is taking place. It's a battle for your memory. If those few brave people who fight for your memory and the future of our species fail, then it will be as though none of you had ever lived. No one will live long enough to remember, and in a generation, all will be forgotten." The throng began to tremble, and she could feel its tenebrous motion as she concentrated, 6.5 billion souls crying out in frustration and anger. If she had been on the other side of the river, she would have felt the small earthquake that ensued. The souls of the nearly lost humanity chose a leader who stepped forward from the crowd. He wasn't in the forefront of the miles and miles of spirits, and as he moved, the other spirits parted to make way for his approach. They slid to the side to allow him to pass without moving their legs. Kaylee wondered who they had chosen to speak for them. Who would speak for the dead? Would it be some great statesman, a leader of men, a holy man, or a general? When the wave of souls parted before her, she saw who it was and was driven to bite her bottom lip in pain and frustration. Why him? Not now, she thought. I need to concentrate. It was her lost beloved, Bud. He stood there expressionless for a long moment, and a silence fell between them like a wall of lead. She didn't know what to say, and she began to weep. At this sign, the souls collectively murmured a sound that seemed like pleasure. Finally, she said, "Why do they suddenly seem happy when my heart is breaking?" Bud answered, "Your tears. You see, no one mourned them. Everybody died and no one was left to cry or say a prayer or even miss them. Except for you and Brady." "Thanks, Kaylee." With tears still staining her cheeks, she stepped forward and opened her arms, and Bud stepped forward to meet her embrace. She felt nothing as she hugged empty air, but the shade of Bud seemed relieved and moved. In a moment he stepped away and looked into her eyes. She remembered all the times she had imagined sharing her life with him. Now he was a memory, a lost future she would never know. "I've been asked to speak for them," he said. Kaylee nodded. "I've come to ask for their help," she said. "Brady has become one with the monster," she explained, "and I don't know if we can destroy Grendel without destroying him." Brady is known to us, the Renamer. He is the one chosen to begin the rebuilding of the world. He is? She asked quizzically. She thought of him so often as that annoying boy who sometimes seemed totally insane and quirky, who referred to stories from books like they'd actually happened. He didn't even brush his hair. Yes, together you will guide those who survive through the change. He is the Renamer, and you are the conduit. Bud, I'm just me. He smiled and took her hand. She felt nothing but her hand, but rose nonetheless. None of us are what we think we are. Kaylee, I love you. I loved you from the minute I saw you. I saw you as the amazing person who you are, even when you were confused and feeling small and other people judged you poorly. And because I love you, I'd tell you the truth. Can spirits lie? She wondered aloud. Yeah, they can, especially to themselves. But I could never lie to you. We're waiting here because we're uncertain. We're the first of all the people to not move on because we desperately need to know how this story ends. You see, it's our story. Everything's a story, even this. It would be like reading a book for a lifetime and then never turning the last page to see how things turn out. We need to know. We understand, if you didn't broadcast this message, that the few and scattered groups who might never meet will all be forgotten. We know Joe is the last man on Earth who can truly understand the technology to make such a broadcast, and soon he'll be here with us. Well, then you understand why I'm here, don't you? Bud looked at her longingly and nodded. We understand you need our help, and we're ready to give it. Kaylee looked around her, beyond her dead boyfriend's lifeless eyes, and as deeply as she could into the ranks of the populace. They looked back with an intensity and fear that plainly spoke to her. They were beyond the world of humans and doings. They were the dead. Then she remembered her other name, Charon, the conduit. What did Bud say to her? She was the one who would connect the world of the past to the world of the future? What did that mean? Could she do this thing if... She looked down at her hand, the one that Bud was holding without so much as a touch. This much was real. A dead boy and a living girl holding hands, and all was right with the universe. She felt it, and it was enough. If one of them could lift her hand and hold it, then how much more could 1,000, 1,000,000, or 1,000,000,000 hands do? She stood on her tiptoes and spoke loudly and clearly, and her voice was not that of a teenage girl from Brewer, Maine of the United States of America. It was an ancient and ever-youthful voice, the voice of Persephone, the voice of the water and the end of all things, beautiful and terrible at once. If you wish to be remembered, if you wish those few survivors on the other shore to have a chance, then you must do something you could never do in life. Old or young, regardless of your beliefs and views, loves and hatreds, you're all equal now. Join hands. Join hands now. Because she was the river daughter from a time before the river flowed against the banks of humanity, each and every shade that waited on that far shore heard her clearly. There was no need to wait for the word to be passed. She waited. Had she commanded them? No, it didn't work that way. She'd pleaded with them, offering them a way to continue on their journey. She finally understood what the term conduit meant. As she stood there, she watched as 1,000,000,000 souls joined ethereal hands. Those who would have murdered each other for their beliefs in life joined hands here, creating one massive chain of soul. Kaylee's hand was still being held by Bud, and she began to feel something amazing. As increasingly more souls began to link together, she felt Bud's hand begin to solidify. It didn't feel warm or even alive, but it was definitely there. All of their longing and remembrance coalesced in the palm of her living hand, this brazen and brave girl who had journeyed to the land of the dead to save the world of the living. "It's done," whispered Bud into her ear. He stepped back and smiled. As she looked out upon the endless throng which stretched to the far horizon, she saw the smiles of 1,000,000,000 souls, all looking upon her as the last thing left in Pandora's box. "Now, She understood. It wasn't Joe and it wasn't Brady. It was her. She was the last best hope. She was the little child in the back of the army truck from her dream. Where they had stood without hope as the days and months passed, they now all felt that hope had returned to them, and they began to move away from the shore, finally. She felt their satisfaction and longing for the future of humans. She was the hope of the dead. "Thank you," she said to them, all in her Thank you, she said to them all in her river daughter voice. They said nothing in return. They were beyond the need for thankfulness. They were the dead. End of part 1 of chapter 35.